thank you all so much for joining. We have a wonderful agenda ahead of us today. But for context, since there's some new faces in the audience for me, my name is Olivia Goldstein. I am the CEO of Upstate Venture Connect. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is really to support all of the amazing high-growth companies we have here in upstate New York. So a lot of the work that we do is just bringing the same connections that you would experience if you were building a high-growth company in New York City or Silicon Valley, right here to upstate New York. And the vision is, how can we create more of these businesses here to create more jobs for this region and ideally create more wealth. So this is one of the types of programs that we do. It's called Office Hours. We like to introduce a keynote speaker as a fireside chat conversation, and then we also make it interactive for founders that are actively building right now to talk to different investors and mentors and advisors and really get the feedback and connections they need to grow their business. So we're super excited to have you all here, and if you are not familiar with our work, I'm just going to ask Haley, Anton, and Cindy to also just raise their hands if they're in the room. They're outside. Okay, so we're all here. They're here. Come find them. Connect with us to learn more about how to get more involved. So today is a special program, but none of this would be possible without our friends at Albany. So I wanted to just give a quick thank you to Kelly and Maria for hosting us. And Nancy, of course. Nancy also spent 40 minutes trying to figure out the AV with me this morning, so thank you, Nancy. All right, so for today we have a wonderful speaker who coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, is also a Albany alum. And we asked I'll say a dear friend of mine, and honestly a mentor, Jennifer Tegan, to moderate the conversation. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Jennifer Tegan is the managing director of ESD, which is Empire State Development's New York Ventures. In this role, she oversees more than $320 million in both direct and indirect investment programs, including the New York State Innovation Venture Capital Fund, the Pre-Seed and Seed Fund, and over $150 million in fund of funds for emerging managers and accelerator partners. A lot of the funding that goes toward the high-growth businesses in New York State fall under Jennifer's program and her team. And I know Zach and Sylvia are also here. So we're super excited to have Jennifer moderate this meaningful conversation. Please welcome me, and also joining Anna Topol. So Anna is an advisor to many quantum technology startups. She is a former chief technology officer at IBM Research, and during her 25 years at IBM, she was named IBM Distinguished Engineer and Master Inventor. She had held executive roles in strategic partnerships and industry initiatives, and led intellectual property management, R&D, and fundamental technology development programs. Dr. Topol has 30 years of experience in both technical and business development positions. She's authored over 100 publications, 3 book chapters, and 97 patents. She is a fellow of the American Association of the Advancement of Science and a member of the Executive Committee for the Industry Advisory Board for the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. She is also a technical vitality coach, a mother of 2 sons, and wow, this is the most interesting fact. Save the best for last. She skydived despite her fear of heights. So please welcome welcome joining Jennifer and Anya on stage. Thank you.
The seating is low. This is very good.
Made for women.
What an honor, Anya, to be able to sit here with such a technology giant in your field and all the work that you've done. And certainly a privilege to be able to talk to you. I'm going to try not to hog all the time today with all the questions that I have for her, and leave some time at the end for some Q&A for the audience as well. But you're sitting here at your two-time alma mater, SUNY Albany, that's gotta feel kind of special and fun. And you're a physics student to PhD researcher, IBM distinguished engineer, startup CEO now. That crosses a lot of interesting boundaries. And most people's, like when you think about that and you're staying on one side or the other, but when you look back, what actually kind of drove you to do things at each of those transitions?
My assumption is that as we mature, we try all different things. So, first you are a student, then you are a postdoc, and so you get all those labels. Then you are a scientist, and like me, you actually become a distinguished engineer. And you have to decide, are you a scientist or are you an engineer? That's one question. Then you become a mother, so you have a lot of titles. And, at the end, you are all or none. And so that's the question we all have to live in. And so for me, it's the question, is it the noun or is it the verb? And for me, it's all about the processes. It's all about verbs. So through all this work, it's excitement about doing something new. So the activities that lead you towards risking changes, an ability to be willing to have others lead you. I think this is the most important part because sometimes we may have intuition that this is what I should do, and somebody else says, no, I really believe you should be doing this. And trusting people is not that easy when you have your own intuition. And so I think letting yourself trust others as well, who know you, it's incredibly important, and I think that's what led me through all those different jobs.
And there's usually a moment when you kind of transition from, to really studying a problem to actually wanting to solve that problem. And when was that shift for you? And do you think that's something that people are taught, or does it just kind of naturally happen?
No doubt coming to SUNY Albany was that moment when I really realized I want to get my hands dirty and work on it. So just so you know, I did have a master's degree offer which I accepted from Notre Dame. That's what I was supposed to go. But I came here to the lab, which was the physics lab, and what I realized is that in Notre Dame, it was, at the time, the best 3-5 system. So think about it, high vacuum systems with all the whistles that it had. And it was the best of its kind in that lab. But what I realized is just that one thing. When I came to the physics lab, they had X-ray machine, and STM, and electronics, and fabrications. And so I knew I'm risking less because I'm going to learn more. And I think this is where you get your hands dirty because you can try so many things. And I think this is where many of us think, especially later in a career, that the choice is not between doing and coming up with the solutions. The choice is more between, am I the strategic person or an execution person? In older times, that's what we think. Am I the person who is thinking strategically, or I'm better at execution? And in life, we don't have the privilege to choose. We actually have to do both. And I think you get really good at rolling your sleeves and executing on solutions when you realize your mission in life to do both. Come with a great idea and then do it. I think that's the only way to really succeed.
Love that. I want to unpack a little bit this recent transition that you're making and talk. You spent a long time at IBM and really built out an amazing program there. Working inside a large institution like that, it teaches you teaching you about building that you think is harder, or I guess what did that teach you inside of that institution? That you're now kind of taking and looking at it from the outside and applying it in a whole new way to the startup landscape that you're in?
I think what you get is when you're in a large organization, you may not appreciate few things that the corporate organization provides to you. And I'll give you an example. Every single time I would prepare for a fireside chat like this, I had a whole marketing team that I had to review and prepare. And at the time, that was a burden, right? Because you had to have extra meetings and organize everything. But now when you are a startup owner, if you say something wrong, there's nobody behind you to say, I told you so, don't say it, right? It is what you learn, is you really on the startup side have more responsibilities for your organizations in the places where you didn't think you will have that responsibility. The same thing as it goes for legal. I really comment on this. When you think about IP, residual, everything you think of T's and C's in a contract, in the big corporations, there's a whole body of supporters. The science is delivered through the fact that you have business development, marketing, PR, and everybody is there to help you. In a startup, who has that hat, right? Who helps you and who's responsible? So I really appreciate what I don't have anymore, but I also had the chance to work on it with all those people, so I really know now what I need. And I think that's the benefit I have by working first in a corporate.
And you spent years putting together technologists and enterprise customers in the same room to build things together. What does that process reveal about why good technology so often struggles to find its market?
I'm a physicist. I was trained to deliver amazing tech talks, which are really at technical forums. I was trained to talk to other deep techies. I was not trained to deliver communications that relates to technology and science in general. And I actually didn't know this till two things happened in my life. One was I was maybe 10 years ago invited to come to actually SUNY Albany to meet students. And one of the students asked me, what do you do? And of course, the proud scientist, I went all deep into what I do. And the student was smart enough to ask again. I wasn't asking what you do as in your team. What does IBM do? And I'm like, whoa, that is a very different answer. And I really need to now think about this, right? It's the science, the way you translate the question. And by the way, only then I realized he actually did ask, what do you do at IBM? I just completely misheard it. It was, what do you do? And so I really realized listening to questions and understanding that everyone is on a different level, so the way you communicate science is so difficult. And so the second thing that happened, I went and I was a CTO in assistance organization. And everyone told me, research, IBM research is a pearl. This is where the magic happens. This is when the clients come and they are wowed. And so I went back to research and I was responsible for all the client centers. And I saw it right there that the first thing we had to do, and this is when I spent my first 2 years, is teaching researchers how to communicate science. We have Alan Alda, who has amazing programs that relate to teaching 6th graders about science. What he does is he takes people who are deep in technology and makes them for 10 minutes explain their technology to 6th graders. And the 6th graders grade you. It's an amazing thing. And we did the same thing to our researchers. We said, you are now going to pretend you're meeting 6th graders. And we brought 6th graders to IBM. And that was the best training that I could deliver. And the difference is incredible. Once you allow the researcher to meet, oh, by the way, if you cannot train everybody to do this. I'm just going to be very honest, this is the skill. You ask, what can you train, what can you not? But if you have a person in between that can do it for you, so a researcher says something, a business industry person asks the questions, and you're the translator in between, you still succeed. And I think this is what I know for the startups. We have a lot of very innovative technologies, and the question is, are the people who are bringing those technologies to funds rounds and others are able to connect with everybody? And if they cannot, can we bring to them the connecting dots, somebody in the middle who will do it for them, with them for them? It's huge. Communicating science is I think, the biggest challenge we have. And raising more money.
I wonder if the PhD programs around the country should have Alma come in and do that program. Founders in this room are trying to get large enterprises to adopt their technologies. What do early stage companies most consistently get wrong when it comes to approaching that kind of relationship?
So I admit I was on the other side where startups would come and, we're saying, we have a great technology. And most of the time, I think they left thinking they didn't hear me. They didn't realize I have something great. Okay, maybe sometimes we didn't, but most of the time, we just didn't meet in the middle on IP. Most of the time, IP and money, of course, those are the two. But at the end, big corporations have a choice, either to work with you and somehow utilize your IP and work with you, or do it themselves. Learn everything there is to what you do and figure out how to do it themselves. And most of the big corporations have a lot of talent that they invested in, and so it's really in a management level where you decide, what is my strategy? When do I invest versus when I do it myself? And I think the biggest challenge that I saw is that very often the startups and the smaller companies come to the big corporations directly to the business development organization. But if that big corporation has a research organization and you came through research, you are carried by the techies who know they need you. And so I think it's the approach, how often do we know who the researchers are at those big companies? Have we spent time before going to the business development, figure out which conferences do those techies go, and be at the same conference with them, and meet them where at the conference level, the researcher is there to talk about their work. So you can absolutely hear what they need, and you can revalidate where they are and are you needed. By the way, they're there to meet everybody. Right? So it's very different than doing a cold call and saying, can I come and talk to you, versus being on an open floor when they're right there, to talk to you. So I think those are the two things. Knowing what is the worth of your IP to that organization, could they quickly develop it themselves? And the second, are you going through the right channels? At the end, of course, you have to go through the business development team, but what's your first step and how you do it first?
Great advice. That's really interesting. Speaking about kind of your intellectual property and managing it, it's something that a lot of founders think about too late, really. So what should they understand early about how technology actually creates and captures value as they're building their companies?
I am sure you're all going through this. Is the question, do I have the IP? How quickly I develop the IP? Who owns the IP? All those things I think everybody has to consider. But I think the moment when you have a very good understanding of it, you don't want to be caught by somebody asking you, where is your IP? And you're right, when you say, I think university owns it, you're done, right? I mean, really knowing what you have, who has it, who owns it. By the way, it happens sometimes that university owns it, but having a very good understanding why and what it means, and you own it. You own your company, you own your IP. But the second part is when you want to have a discussion with somebody else, I've seen so many startups that are not comfortable to know when to ask the NDA, when to go deeply into discussion of their technologies, and when not to. We all prefer to go high level, and I think that's why we often lose the audience as well, because you have to have a belief in yourself, explaining the technology at all different levels, a very general for everybody, a little deeper for the techies, and a trust in the right partner when to go a little deeper and when. Is it after contract or before contract? This is not easy because remember, there's something called residuals. If you have a discussion with somebody, you're retaining the knowledge from that meeting, period. You do. And big corporations simply tell you they own the residuals. If they had a discussion with you, they own that knowledge from the meetings you had with you. And so if you have, at the earlier discussions, the deeper you go, the more you want to protect yourself And if you sign somebody else's NDA, please read, was there a clause on residuals? Do they all know everything they've learned from the discussion with you? And when can they use it? So IP is incredibly important, but it's not just what you produce and how you deliver it in your products, but on a daily basis is how you treat the IP and what's in your brain versus what's on the paper. I don't want to scare anybody, but that is a very difficult piece to understand and do.
I have a hard time not being really transparent in everything I do, so I think I'd be a mess without you.
I don't
Not
know.
by companies.
But I think for all the founders, I think you understand. This is where really understanding of human nature, human characteristic, human behavior is so important. If you know that one of the people is, okay, I'm going to call it the scientist that wants to share all the knowledge, and you know they shouldn't put somebody else in the meeting. Like, understand who has, what gift everybody has, what talents everybody has, when to use them and how in conversations is huge. I really think it's understanding what everybody brings to the table at which time.
So it's not one of the questions that was on the list, so but I warned you. But anyway, I heard you talk a little bit about it last night, but I'm super curious as to why you decided to leave IBM and move to your new startup.
Yes. So the blessing you have at working at IBM is that at 55 you actually can retire. You know, my children, when I came home and I said 55, time to retire, they said, Mom, you will never stop working. What does even the word retirement mean? And for me, I think it's a very simple word. I have, in my mind, I know it's just in my mind, 10 more years to do something till I really retire. What do I want to do for the last 10 years? And so if you think about this, I've been in a corporate organization for most of my life. I've been a CTO for 14 years. Do I want to do more corporate work when I'm the most comfortable? Do I want to, I think you've all seen, we need all the help we can get from the government to help us with the technology development. Do I want to be that next arm of working with the government to do it? I do have a passion for teaching. Do I want to be a teacher, right? Like, you have an open book to do what you want to do. And the thing that I found is that as soon as I was asked to consider being the CEO of the startup, that was the thing that I had the least friction in. Like, absolutely, by the way, my family had the most friction with that. My family is like, you have no idea how much money you're gonna make, when you're gonna make it, you know, are you really sure, you know, you never done this, right? So, but there's something inside you that you know leads you towards being happy every day to get to work and do it. And I knew that in all those other jobs, I would fulfill part of my need, but startups gives you all. You work with students, you work with governments, you work with venture capital, you work with the corporate organizations, right? So that was actually the best for my next 10 years. And the last one, which is more important, I think, to all of you, when you believe in a technology you want to, and I'm going to, for the first time as a researcher, use the word sell to others. I never used that word before, but this is true. As a CEO, now you're selling. It is incredible. When you believe in it, you have wings you've never had before. And it's incredible, just simply incredible.
But you know, you've had so many different kind of roles that you've played across your career, and I guess, you know, some kind of lessons learned about when you are entering these spaces, entering new rooms, and working with new people. How do you kind of walk into that room where nobody knows you and make them understand or help them to like be compelled by what you're doing and want to work with you?
I'm going to ask one, two things. First of all, I think the only way for people to remember you is if you had an impact and you helped them with something. They truly remember you the longest if you had an impact on answering the question they had, connecting them with the right person, leading them towards something they couldn't do to themselves. So I think we have the hardest challenge to do this if you just go in a room for 30 minutes and you want to be remembered. That is very difficult, because how do you give that piece of you that stays with that person? But even then, I think the biggest thing you have to do is prepare and know who will be in that room. If you have only 30 minutes and you want to be impactful, you have to ask 2 questions. Is there somebody in that room that I want to meet with? So it's the selfish question, what do I want for myself? Or the second one is, if I'm passionate about the problem I want to solve, is there somebody else in that room who has similar problems so we can together do it, right? So it's how prepared are you for any meeting you go to? What is your role in that meeting? What do you want to do? You know, and then you will leave something that impresses others because you were prepared. You're not going there just to sell. I just wanted to say that probably doesn't leave the best impression, but you can try.
As we look at the convergence, I'm going to move on to a little bit more in terms of what you're working on now, but as we look at the convergence of hardware, AI, infrastructure, and deep tech, what areas do you get most excited about that that are being disrupted today and that you are going to be disrupted tomorrow? And where should founders spend their focus? Where are you spending your focus?
I was going to say, it's the history of my life. So just imagine, I am a semi person, right? So I build chips that go into your phones and others. So the first thing that I always was doing is thinking towards this building supercomputers, things that are gonna help us compute and do things better. Then came AI, which is, the same thought. You have a classical computers that have limitations. Now you're going to be doing AI because it can do better, augment the classical computers. Now comes quantum computing. We are for the first time realizing that there are problems that even those supercomputers cannot solve, and now you're going to have the quantum computers. But the future is not one or the other or the other. The future is all those 3 things integrated. And so the comment that I have for all of us, if you work in a quantum computing, clearly you think about this all the time. But for those of us who do not work in a quantum computing, every single organization is supposed to create an organization that lasts. When we hire our CTOs, when we hire our security people, when we figure out what our organizational structures are, we most of the time focus so much on the products we deliver. But remember, at the end, your role and your job as a C-level is to realize what your company will be when you scale up. You are a bigger company now. Have you thought about IT? How you're going to run your company? Have you thought about security? At the beginning, it seems like such a waste of time because I have all those other things to do. But if you are hiring your CTO with the thinking that in the future that CTO also will be CISO, they also going to own security, you would be hiring a different person. So it's the question, where I am right now, what is the technology that I'm implementing right now? Everybody's implementing AI. But at the end, my company, I know my company is going to grow over the next 5 years. I am here to prepare this company for any technology that is coming up. I need a person that is techie enough, geeky enough, whatever you call it, that independently what technology comes, they will be able to integrate it or know what to do with it. And I think we are too obsessed with answering the question of AI, not knowing that every single time we say, for example, if I want to be really prepared for the future and give differentiation to my startup, I should be thinking, do I have not just sustainability mission, but ethical mission for my company? Once I have ethical mission for my company, there is definitely security piece in it as well, right? Policy piece and so forth. So I think that quantum computing is here, just for all of you. I'm a quantum computing specialist. I laugh when people say quantum computers have not been built yet. They've been built, by the way you live here, RPI has a beautiful computer you can see. More importantly, those quantum computers are already giving us proof of concepts, what's possible, and what that means that for your companies that have a long-term runs, hire the right people. They don't have to be quantum technology specialists. They have to be techy enough to know what to do with it. I will end there. Again, not scaring you, just saying, invest in the people who have, like you, ability to do more. If you're a CEO, oh, by the way, this is the funniest one. I was asked right now, of course, to define, what is my CEO role. And if I was still in IBM, I would know exactly what the definition of the CEO is. Because I wouldn't do PR, I wouldn't do marketing, my role would be very direct. As a CEO, for the first few years, your role is much bigger. As a CEO 10 years later, hopefully you will finally delegate. Think the same way for all the people you hire. They have more hats they have to wear right now. Don't think just about your products. You really think about long-term company scale.
You're hiring your own team now.
Correct.
What else are you thinking about when you're making those hires and building the kind of company and culture and environment that you want to be able to succeed?
I've been in a corporate organization, and as an executive, of course, ability to decide on a strategy, which projects you keep, which projects have to go, which people you keep, which people have to go, is the burden you carry, and you have to do this. When you hire in a big corporate organization, you hire them for a very specific job and mission. It is very easy to help them in their career progression when they want to change it, because you have a big organization, you have ability to change and move them. When you hire people in a startup, they first wear many hats. When your company grows and you realize, for example, that the person who was managing small group did great, but now when they have to manage the whole organization, they get lost. What do you do? And I think what I realized is that very often what you need to do is, when you first define the role with that person, you remind them that this role is here for them, that's the definition of the role, but the roles will be changing, and so you need to really find very flexible minds. People who can understand what their goal is, what they want to do, and if they always want to manage small teams, you think about this way in advance. It's on us to hire the right teams, and it's on us to figure out what to do with those teams, the people we hired, in the long run. Their jobs will change, right? The mission of your organization will change, but you're still responsible for them. You're responsible for their careers. So how early do you talk to them and make them so aware that their mission will be changing as much as the company will be changing?
I want to talk a little bit about New York, because you obviously came from Poland to New York to Albany, and you skied. And what do you get excited about that you see happening here, and what else do you think that this area and this region really needs to continue to thrive and be successful in some of these new technology areas?
I have two sons, as I mentioned, 18 and 20, so they're on a way to figure out what they're going to do in life. And I tell them all the time, I cannot be more excited about where we are in general technology development. We all have access to everything. We are more connected. We can do more. And I just came from Europe. Excitement about technology is everywhere. And as I spoke about, I just wanted to comment, sometimes we all wait for permission to do some things. Sometimes we are so limited by, can I do this now, should I wait, maybe next time. There's no next time. For me, it's whatever you think should be done, you do it. And I think this region will truly benefit from people who are the doers. Going back to your first question, when you roll your sleeves. There's so many technical challenges that we all know still have to be solved in our world, from simple ones to big ones. There's spot for us all to succeed, but I think we too often wait for permission. We too often worry that, this certificate didn't come, this accreditation didn't come, slurry of everything that we all get boggled in and stopped by. And so, going back to working with people who have the same let's go and do it mentality in your teams is huge. You tell them you want to be unstoppable. Find somebody who stops you. You want to be unstoppable. And it is not easy. You all know, you work day and night, you look for the funding, you talk to people and you try to persuade them and you try to persuade them and nothing happens. Find what is the thing that recharges you? You personally. What is the thing that recharges everybody on your team? It is huge, and I think for this region, if all of us succeed, all of us in this room succeed, we will carry on the next generations of capabilities in this region. So we cannot fail, period. We all have to succeed.
So it was a few years ago you graduated from SUNY Albany. What would you be telling your 20-something-year-old self if you had an opportunity to say, Anya, you're 22, graduating from, with this degree, what would you want her to know?
I know it's gonna sound crazy, but I had extreme complexes. I was very shy, and so for me coming to SUNY Albany was amazing is because I actually could be an amazing scientist behind all those tools. I was behind the SCM, I was behind the X-ray machine, and so I didn't have to talk a lot. I just had to write my thesis, and what I really will tell my selfish self is that I was selfish just because I was shy. I actually probably could teach more people what to do. Even at that age, when I was a student here, I could have impacted more people if I just was more able to open up to others. And I think in a current generation, we need to help the students to carry the torch of being curious and not being afraid to talk, not being afraid to ask questions. I wish I did much more. And what I benefited, of course, is that the group I joined, we had Saturday whip meetings. So every Saturday, we met with our professor, Saturday morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and he told us, one of the students presents, that's what the Saturday is for, and I'm observing who's asking questions. And so throughout, you slowly were able to grow and mature to ask questions. I just wish I asked more questions when I was younger. And by asking questions made others think about things that, could be solved. I was just too close up, too shy, too uncomfortable in my own skin.
Right, I have one last question, and I don't know how much time do we have left? Yeah, okay. This is just, so I work for Empire State Development, and we manage the I Love New York campaign for tourism. And I love to ask this question of people is like, when people come to visit you here in Albany, where do you take them? Hopefully not Niagara Falls.
I always go to John Petcher's Park, so Niagara Falls doesn't. I think you can just simply tell them, come to my house. It doesn't matter if it's your lab, if it's your house. Come to any place where you're gonna show them the passion and the love you have for the state. And any one of them, through you, will know that this is the place to be. So in my case, it will be this place. SUNY Albany. I could have gone out of New York 10,000 times. This is the place. I know this is, the next 10 years is still connected to this place. But each one of you has the deep place where you will impress anyone who's going to talk to you because you have the love that will just radiate. And so, bring them to your places in New York.
That's the best answer I've heard yet. All right,
she did not put that question on mine.
Is there time for questions? Yeah.
I can move a mic around if that's okay.
Hi, my thanks, Hannah. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here with us today. You shared so many amazing, wonderful gems. My notebook is full. Okay, so I'd love to quote you back for a question, if that's okay. You said enterprise startup sales often fall through or the pitch doesn't land somewhere because like IP money is often in the conversation. Agreed. Build it or buy it is one of the directions that I feel like most early enterprise SaaS conversations land. For a lot of the people in the room who sell into enterprise, it's actually not me, when we have AI forward tools, what do you think is one of the best advantages that people selling in that situation should leverage as a benefit to working with a startup when trying to sell into an incumbent who is asking themselves that build it or buy it question? They've secured enough interest to get them to ask the question when often, I'm sure a lot of us are AI tools. What do you think is one of the angles that you've seen or is the most powerful in today's day and age?
I'm hoping I'm answering your question, but I'm going to say 3 things come to my mind first. Coming to this meeting, I know who I'm going to meet, and even without you sending me information on who I'm going to meet, I use AI to know everything there is about all the startups, people who I'm going to be meeting with. And so I think that we have such strong ability to learn from AI for researchers, whatever it is, to be better prepared when we go to that meeting. If you know that company like IBM usually builds it themselves, everything, you will be better prepared because you're not expecting, you are now trying to figure out how you can live with them in an environment they are. If you are going to the company that the merger and acquisition is a typical thing they're gonna do, they're not gonna even ask, can you collaborate? They're gonna talk to you and next day you're gonna get an offer, they're gonna buy you. You need to know those things. You need to, and before it was really hard to find those things, but you can find those things. Number 2, as it goes for AI, I think that the future is so different. I was just advised, do not invest and hire a financial person, just hire a person who can accreditate all of this. AI will do all your finances for you. You just have to have a person who knows, for a few hours validates you did everything legally. And so when you go to the big corporation, you have to remember the way you are set up and the way you run may be very different than those big corporations are set up. And so when you get to talk about finances, you have to understand how they operate. Even though you may be so light on your finance, they have very different expectations. My biggest one is, even if you get to the deal, most of the companies will in their contract tell you they're not going to pay you for at least 90 days, 2 months after you deliver it. And you expect that while you're delivering, you're getting the money because, that's your partnership. And so really using AI to understand how different your financial, legal setup is versus the company you're going to talk to is huge. They are just a different beast than you are. What is the common ground between you and them to effectively execute, not on the technology, but on the processes that you have to work on with them? And the third one is, I could personally, I can do all the science myself, but I do so much better when AI prepares me right now. I will tell you, I have 10,000, in my case it's Claude, right? I ask Claude for something, and then I correct Claude, and I correct Claude on the scientific things. But yet sometimes I'm absolutely excited and surprised by things I get from AI that I wouldn't expect. In the question I ask, I am so set that this is the answer I want, that when the Claude brings something from edge, something, it connects the dots for me that I sometimes didn't have. It's huge. I'll give you an example. And again, I'm going to bring an example for IBM. People ask me, can startups work with IBM? Period. And I would say that what I told you is very difficult. If you just want to be a startup and you just want to sell, talking to the product, all those things is very difficult. But if you actually type IBM startups, what you may actually find is that the search will lead you to the IBM catalog for quantum. And you're like, what does that mean? In some places, IBM is incredible in working with the startups. In a quantum space, IBM wants to be visible as an organization that on their hardware and software enables many companies. They have a catalog in which when you partner with them for almost free, because this is the organization they have with startups, your solution can be in their catalog. So you never sign a deal that you are actually selling IP to them. You're through them amplifying your work. And I think most of you, by the way, it's in a quantum space, so you have to figure out in your own spaces, is it the same? You wouldn't even know it, because you would think, you know, with IBM, you have to go to the product team, you wouldn't even know that there is a different venue, different option. But by using the AI, it gives you a link to a different world, and you have to figure out what that means to you. So, AI, your friend.
Other questions?
Hello, my name is Dan. I'm a builder, and a farmer, and a potter. I too wish that I learned to ask questions a little bit earlier. So at the risk of sounding overly technical, I have a very technical question for you. In 2022, you published a patent on the network of Tesla time series. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on how that process went, what that looked like for you, and then how you're bringing it into the quantum world.
Yeah. When we published that patent, it was incredibly important if you look at other authors of that patent, that we had a variety of people who brought this idea to. I'm going to say upfront to everybody, I myself could not come up with that patent, period. In the tensor patent, we had a person who understood AI, a person who coded, so they understood, a person who, like me, knew that we have solving problems for our clients, and most importantly, a mathematician. You know, it's like, with the combination of all those people, we were able to develop this patent. With the technology currently, we are beyond TensorFlow deployments in many of them. So this is a statement in time. That patent was incredibly relevant in the 2022. When we were thinking about neural networks and all the architectures we're gonna build, we didn't know how to address the questions of tensors and calculations and in quantum and so forth. Since then, there's many other companies that did it in a different way, modern way. But what this patent gives IBM, by the way, it's my patent, but of course it belongs to IBM, is that if you now go and you negotiate licenses with other companies who have IP in this area, that patent is always part of the portfolio. It's a cornerstone of the fact that says, we were one of the first that really thought that this is a problem. We might have not deeply go into this area, so now we are licensing with you, but we have a cornerstone for that technology, right? And so it is not direct success, we are deploying it and implementing it, but from the point of view of when, it is in our portfolio, and stops others from doing the same things we wanted to do and claim that they're doing it, right? So it's huge, in some ways, huge.
Other questions? Anyone else?
All right, well, thank you, Jennifer and Anya, so much. So I'm going to ask if you are in Founder doing office hours, we're doing them downstairs. Cindy and Anton are out there. They can direct you on where to go and where your meetings are, and same goes for mentors. But thank you all so much for coming, and we appreciate you.